Newcomers to Canada all face very, very different circumstances for a whole bunch of reasons. And at the same time, there is so much that is similar. Our next guest has experienced firsthand what it's like to move to Canada and try to navigate our financial systems, the names, the institutions, the process, all that stuff, and a lot of the challenges that come with it. She decided to do something about those challenges. Our guest is Yewande Oduwole. She is the creator and host of The Wealthy Immigrant, which is a podcast that talks about financial literacy, her journey, and endeavors to make a difference for others who listen to it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bruce. It's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to be on the side of the interview because
Right.
I've been a fan for a long time. So yeah, thank you for
You
having
just
me.
get to sit there and answer questions. How delightful is that? You arrived in Canada 9 years ago from Nigeria. I was listening to your podcast trailer. You said you found the financial services sector judgmental, tough to navigate.
Yeah,
Tell us more about your experience.
for sure. So I came to Canada 9 years ago, 2015, September 2015. I remember exactly. And I came as a student. And as a student, you land with your family member or wherever it is here, and they take you to the first bank that is on the street or whatever bank they bank with. So no idea what I was getting into, no, background. We got into the bank. I got a credit card, checking account, and credit card insurance protection. I remember that. And just back home, it used to be called savings and current account, where savings is where you do your everyday banking, and then current is where you save your money. And then here it was called checking and savings. And for the longest time, I used my savings as my everyday banking because I mean that's what I was used to. And every time I would wonder, why am I being charged money for spending my money? That's kind of weird. Like, what kind of country am I in? I quickly realized that that was not the right account and that was not what it was designed for. And then on top of that, I had to deal with, hearing people talk about TFSA, RSP, all those four-letter acronyms that I have no idea what they meant. But yeah, it definitely was a journey back
How
then.
long did it take for you to feel sort of settled? Was there a moment when you thought, oh, okay, I kind of got this?
Honestly, I would say it took at least 5 years to feel sort of settled. I didn't feel settled until like 2019, 2020. That's
Mm,
when I'm like, okay, I think I sort of understand the system.
right.
Yeah, it took a bit. Yeah.
You decided to launch a podcast to talk about your experience, to bring in other experiences. Tell us more about the intention. Why did you decide to do that?
Absolutely. So, like I said, as an immigrant, there's not enough financial education geared towards immigrants from the perspective of an immigrant. There's a lot of, resources out there that talks about different types of accounts, but there are things that are very peculiar to immigrants that is not widely talked about. And I thought a podcast is a perfect place to discuss my experiences, to discuss other people's experiences, and also show the success of those people that have actually navigated the system and have achieved success doing it. There are a lot of stories about people selling things to immigrants that should not or they should not be selling. So just being able to give a platform to stories like that was why I started the podcast.
What have you noticed as you have gotten into episode after episode? What is universal, and what are things that are specific to particular regions, particular genders, particular circumstances in which people arrive? Some are students like you. Other people are, economic immigrants. They're bringing a business. They're coming with assets. Some are refugees.
I think for a lot of people, what has really stuck out is money is different here in Canada. So with different cultures, money is treated differently. Some people talk about it, some people don't talk about it. Like here, there's a lot of talk about money. The culture I come from, it was just, we just nobody talks about how to make money. It was just sort of like a hush sort of discussion. So there's that commonality. There's also how people address credit. Like how do you use credit? If you're coming from from a culture where credit card was never used. How do you use it here? How do you view it? So those are the things I've also seen. I've also seen how people are trying to understand how to teach their own children now about finances, because they didn't have education. So now they're getting to a system where they have to learn it, and then how do they pass that information to the next generation?
There is a tremendous amount of unconscious bias for all Canadians, I guess all citizens of the world, but I can imagine that there is a different circumstance or a different way of walking through the world when you are a newcomer from England, your family was there for 400 years, and you show up versus someone like yourself who comes from Nigeria. Canadians like to think that we are a multicultural society, and yet barriers exist, racism exists. How does that connect to people getting their financial footing here?
I would say that there's not a lot of emphasis to the experience of an immigrant when it comes to finances. So you go into the bank and they tell you, "Oh, open this type of account, I'll open this," but there's no one really like helping you through that journey. I can walk into a bank and it can say, "Oh, get a GIC, open a TFSA account," but no one is saying, "Oh, a TFSA, you can also invest in a TFSA account." So as opposed to just leaving it in a bank account, you can actually, invest in the financial market. There's that extra step is not there. And I think that really, those are the barriers. And a lot of, also, if you're coming from different culture, sometimes when you think about investing, you're thinking about real estate. From Nigeria, a lot of people will do real estate or fixed deposit. And now you're coming into a culture where there is more emphasis on financial markets. So there's a gap in that where I'm coming here, I'm trying to buy real estate, but we all know how the housing market is right now. You can barely even get into it. And I'm thinking, what else can I do? Am I just here to like pay bills and like, get a job and just get by? So there's that gap that is not really being addressed, and no one is taking that extra step to bring people to like other ways they can, yeah, succeed in the system.
What do you notice is different culturally in terms of the topic of retirement? Because I opened an RRSP when I was 14. And the reason I did was
Lucky
because I
you.
know I wanted the tax deferral. And in Canada, for sure I was young, but in Canada, that's something that people always do. In Nigeria, is there a retirement savings culture, or do you save in the form of real estate and expect culturally that your kids will take care of you as you age?
That's it. Yes, culturally, your kids take care of you. Retirement was never a word that we even used. Like it was just you work until you're tired, and then you go to your family. Your family, your children is your retirement. So coming here, and there's an account where you can save towards a life phase like it's typically meant to be handled by your children was absolutely weird.
So to a Nigerian, you could rename the count the money I'm saving for my children who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing for me.
Exactly. They're supposed to be taking care of me. Why am I saving towards that? Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
As you think about, and I'm sure you can picture listeners who like put on their headphones and they're listening to your podcast and they're learning all the things, what do you hope they take away? What do you want them to experience or take away?
So my hope is that when you're listening, that all the like once you get into the system, the financial acronyms that you're first hit with, things like a TFSA, things like a RRSP, things that are just completely strange, that you have a good understanding of what it means. Not just like high level, but you actually the granular level, like you can relate to what that account actually does for you. You also can see the success story of other people that have navigated a system, that have found it difficult with those particular products and then have excelled in it. That you're able to take away all of that value and all that tips from them and apply it to your own financial situation. That's my hope for the podcast.
Right. If there was one, just before we go, if there was one single topic that you would want, like it's like a mandatory listen before people are allowed to set foot in this country, they need to listen to this particular episode of your podcast to have this particular conversation. What is the number one thing they need to learn?
Learn about banking. Learn about banking because that's the first interaction when you get into the country. So learn all the fees that apply to your account. Learn about overdraft. Learn about all the financial products that applies to banking because from then on you can start to build your literacy with finance and use all the resources available to you. So use the library, read books, and just do a bunch of research.
Yeah. And listen to your podcast. Thank you so
Listen
much
to
for
my
joining us today.
absolutely.
Our guest is Yewande Oduwole. She is the host of The Wealthy Immigrant. You can download episodes wherever you get your podcasts and listen to light, bright, insightful, and I think deeply resonant content for newcomers to Canada.